All right, we're back. Thanks for listening. TJ Trout here, and very lucky this afternoon to have Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg on with us. Good afternoon. Have you been to New Mexico before this?
Oh, yeah. I used to come here all the time. Matter of fact, this is the state where I learned how to drive longer distances. My grandfather retired at Fort Bliss in El Paso. When my grandmother was living, we would come out every year, and we'd drive up somewhere into New Mexico to TRC or Ruidoso or Santa Fe, where my mom spent some of her childhood. So I love being out here, but it's, of course, different and special to be able to do it in the current capacity as Transportation Secretary, looking at all the transportation issues and needs out here.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, my niece who lives in South Bend, Laura, says hi to you. You don't know her, but I just had to pass that on because I would be remiss if I didn't do that.
Well, tell her I said hi.
I'll do that. So tell everybody why you're here. What are you doing here right now in New Mexico?
So today we're having a series of conversations with tribal leaders. We just met with a number of the governors from the Pueblo Indians and their council. We'll be speaking with Navajo leadership and Hopi leadership tomorrow. There are a lot of needs in Indian country, as New Mexicans well know, a lot of safety issues. And so safety was front and center as we were meeting with everybody from folks in tribal law enforcement to people involved in helping prepare people to use cars, everything in between. The number one issue, number one mission of my department is safety. And we're going to make sure that our roads in America, many rural roads and tribal roads in New Mexico, are safer so that everybody gets home as they should. And we have fewer of these crashes and issues.
Sure. What about road pedestrian safety? I mean, it seems here in the state and in the city and in the state we have terrible numbers when it comes to pedestrian deaths and accidents. So what about that?
Yeah, that is a huge part of it, and several things that we're working on. Part of it has to do with the way that roads are designed, creating fewer conflict points where a crash or collision with a pedestrian is likely to happen. Part of it has to do with vehicle standards. So as we get more and more technologies for safety into vehicles, we're looking at how to make sure that we're not just thinking about the things that protect the occupant of a vehicle. That's things like seatbelts, airbags, that kind of thing. But also things that protect anybody who might be involved in a crash with a vehicle who's outside the vehicle. And that's where some of these technologies like automatic emergency braking, warning sounds or lights or sensors, other things can also play an important role. And of course, some things don't change. The importance of fighting impaired driving, drunk driving, driving while intoxicated or high, and a new issue that's getting more and more serious, which is driving while looking at a cell phone, which just don't do it. If you're listening to this right now, do not do that. It is a very serious issue that I think is one of the reasons we've actually seen crashes moving in the wrong direction by the statistics the last few years.
Yeah, believe me, tell me about it. I know all about that. We're talking to Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. I got to do a traffic break. Thanks for being on with me, but on the other side, I'd like to talk to you about infrastructure and maybe a little climate on top of that as well. All right, traffic with...
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good to me. We've got Carlisle coming up, 96.3 News Radio, KKOB. Hold on. All right, we're back. Thanks for listening. TJ Trout here talking to Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Thank you very much for being on. I know you're a busy man. So there's a whole bunch of infrastructure money out there. And what should we be seeing coming to New Mexico?
So I'll break out the New Mexico share in particular, just out of the formula side. So far, $2.2 billion in funding out of this infrastructure law has been announced and headed for New Mexico. About 180 specific projects have been identified. $1 billion of that is headed to roads and bridges. That's the biggest piece. But also transit, airports, a lot of resilience funding. This is making sure that we fund communities and states that are trying to build smarter if we know there's going to be different weather patterns going into the future or other issues, wildfires, droughts, getting our infrastructure ready for that. Clean water, $311 million to provide clean and safe water across the state. So it's safe to say pretty much any form of transportation or infrastructure you can think of in New Mexico, there is some form of support coming here and more where that came from.
So I don't know if this is under your department or another department, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What about Wi-Fi? What about upgrading our nation's electrical grid? Is that part of this or is that something else?
So those are both part of this bill, and one of the things that I'm really excited about. They're outside of the Department of Transportation, but the Department of Commerce is heading up an effort to get good broadband, affordable, fast internet out to every single American. I know there are a lot of rural and tribal areas in New Mexico that would benefit from that. And then the water side is being headed up by the Environmental Protection Agency. So, about half of the overall bill is for transportation. That's our roads and bridges, ports and airports, trains, transit, everything in those departments. But when you look at the water side, the internet side, and then the grid, look, we need to upgrade our grid, especially as you see more and more of a move toward electric vehicles in this country. We can't run tomorrow's transportation system on yesterday's grid. So the Department of Energy is heading up that effort, and a lot of support coming that way too.
Right. So relatedly, we just had New Mexico State University climatologist Dr. David Dubois on right before you. So I wanted to ask you about that too. So what is being done with infrastructure in regards to climate change? I mean, what do you like? Are you involved in like charging stations, getting those onto our roads, and getting cars off of fossil fuels?
Yeah, let's think of it in two ways. Part one is just how climate change affects transportation. So, if you're in an area that didn't used to get flooded, now it's getting flooded every other year, pretty good chance that means your road should be designed differently, maybe even should move. And we're funding things like that on the resilience side. But the other thing we got to do, of course, is prevent it from getting any worse. Transportation is a big part of the climate story, biggest part of our economy, actually, that's putting out carbon pollution. So we can do something about that with steps like a transition toward electric vehicles. And we've really been focused on two things when it comes to the EVs. One, making them cheaper, making sure it's more affordable for more Americans to choose to buy an electric vehicle. Two, the charging side of that. Charging is very different from filling up. And we need to make sure we have the right infrastructure for that, including, especially in a place where you got these wide open spaces in the big sky country here. We've got to make sure that you can, at least every 50 miles, know that you'll be able to get a charge. And also supporting communities in getting charging stations where we need them. So a lot of work going on there. We're 1 year in. We're partnering with the states to get that funding out to help with the charging piece. And the Inflation Reduction Act, that's where there are a lot of tax credits that are making electric vehicles more affordable to buy. Because you can save a lot of money on gas if you own one, but only if you can afford it in the first place. That's why we thought it was so important to use tax credits to bring down that sticker price.
Okay, 30 seconds. Everybody complains about government spending. Tell me why this infrastructure is good government spending.
I think of it kind of like if you have a leaky roof in your house, not fixing it, I guess might save you money in the short term, but it's not doing you any favors financially in the long term if you allow that to get into worse shape and become harder and more expensive to repair in the future or let something really bad happen. It's kind of the same way with infrastructure. You got to take care of it. And, that's just keeping up. If we want to be competitive, if we want to make sure that the 21st century is led by the United States and not by competitors like China, we got to make sure we got the best airports, best roads. The Americans deserve that. Since when is America ever content not to be number one? And this infrastructure funding is about making sure we stay that way.
All right, I know we're out of time. Thank you very much for making time for you today, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Lovely talking to you. Next time you're in town, I'll buy you a burrito.
Sounds good. Look forward to it.
We'll see you later. Bye-bye.